Hello, I'm Pastor Hilly. A question I get asked often is how can I better engage with my community? There are a few answers to this question. One way is to simply give away money. If you get the reputation of giving away money, people will show up and get involved. You could open a 24/7 bouncy house. No kids? No problem. They will show up if you have a 24/7 bouncy house. Or you could overthrow your local government, become your community seat of power. Then people would get engaged. These are just some suggestions, albeit very bad ones. For those of us who work in the church, none of these answers are really going to hit the mark. So I'd like to consider what community engagement is, how it's not as hard as it might seem, and then give some examples of what it could actually look like in a community. But first, a word about work. Often church folks see the work of church as simply the proclamation of the gospel. That is to say, that the work of church is that 59 minutes on a Sunday morning, maybe a small group or a Bible study, and then there's summer Bible camp or a mission trip. Yes, these are all things that the church does. However, to limit the work of the church to these specific activities short sells the potential reach and impact of congregations around the world. Also, ministries that might once have thrived with innovation, like VHS tape trading ministries or puppets, might not be as hip or engaging as they once were. Well, maybe there are new opportunities burgeoning in your midst. And by your midst, I specifically mean your communities. Because sometimes programs and strategies within our walls can insulate us from knowing the people around us in our neighborhoods. Let's consider the word parish. On one hand, parish is a word that means the local church, that is to say, the physical building. Though other older definitions understand the parish to be the community in which the physical church building exists. And thus, a pastor's call is not to the building, but to the community that surrounds it. These are both different from parish, P-E-R-I-S-H, which is the outcome that every adult prays for when locked in a room with too many puppets. Because, and I don't want to say this lightly, but puppets are an abomination. Don't believe me? Watch this. See, when we consider the parish as both our congregation and our community, that duality means we should consider how we communicate with both of these groups, as the starting knowledge, the interests, and the needs of the two might be different. For example, this is Reverend Bob Abrams, assistant to the bishop here in the Southern Ohio Synod. I could challenge the Synod to raise $5,000 for Lutheran World Relief with the promise that if we do, Reverend Abrams would wear the bunny costume from A Christmas Story for part of our next Synod assembly. That's a lot of money for a great cause, and who would say no to a fundraiser like that? Right, Reverend Abrams? Though this kind of event is obviously not going to attract a lot of people who are not already involved with our Synod. However, a local community might turn out for a prearranged kangaroo fight in a brewery parking lot that raises money for Ukrainian refugees in Romania. It's crazy, it's something to talk about, and it's a little less churchy. What's core beneath any and all of these ideas is the reality of a church that is engaged with God's mission for the community, and willing to love that community for the sake of that community. That's a desire to be authentically present, not simply trying to lure people into Sunday morning worship. In 1992, Gary Chapman wrote the book, The 5 Love Languages, where he broke down 5 categories by which people give and receive affection. Those are words of affirmation, physical touch, gifts, quality time, and acts of service. Chapman's basic premise is that we need to be aware of not only how we communicate affection, by that I mean what we offer, but also how we receive affection. If you use words of affection to communicate to your partner and best receive acts of service, then issues may arise when your partner who receives words of affection and shows affection through not words, but through gifts, can't understand why you keep getting upset every time they buy you tickets to, let's say, puppet conventions as they roll through town. I mean, again, honestly, puppets are just a deal breaker. They are a tender red flag, but I digress. So consider this. Maybe the things your congregation is offering are not the same things that your community is asking for, and there is a disconnect between wants and desires and how those needs are being met. There's been a lot of writing recently on generational divides between baby boomers and Gen X and millennials and Gen Z. One idea is that there's a disconnect between people with a mind frame of association and those with a mind frame of interaction. Someone with a mind frame of association, to them, they organize and identify with voluntary societies, and then they stay committed due to a sense of duty, tradition, and a connection with that organization. A mind frame of interaction, on the other hand, is more focused on discovering and expressing the true self through daily experiences and what is happening. To this group, the history, size, and traditions of an organization are not as important as feelings of realness, connectivity, and individual experience. We see this in the church a lot. I mean, I am a Lutheran. My parents were Lutheran. I can recount to you the past 400 years of Lutheran history in America like some gnarled up family tree that at times doesn't even seem to fork until prom night, and then it's almost too late, but then it does, but then it does. I digress. To the mind frame of interaction, this is not important at all, and I'm okay with that. But more so, all of that knowledge and tradition cannot really answer the question, what are you doing this week, when asked by a member of the community who may be open to anything, as long as that anything does not look like traditional church. How do we create a bridge between people living in a mind frame of association and a mind frame of interaction? How do we love our neighbors and let them love us, giving and receiving affection between our communities and our churches, that is to say, both sides of the parish? This is where I'd like to offer a few ideas. The first is to be more focused on engagement than attendance. Attendance is the number of butts in the seats on a Sunday or on a Saturday. Engagement is the number of people willing to come out and help when you need it, party when you're having a good time, and generally be involved on some level with the life of a congregation. One problem that we have is that we do not have good ways of measuring engagement, and thus our quantifying neuroses is left feeling a little insecure. We like to measure, to point to growth, etc. But engagement happens on so many different levels. It's so fluid that sometimes it is hard to measure, but you see it. You can see it happening, and you will see it more the more you look. This brings us to my second idea, and that is invite people to everything at your church but worship. I know this sounds very counterintuitive, but hear me out. The 59 minutes on a Sunday morning is seen by many as the product that the church is trying to sell, and is also seen as a huge hurdle by some. Why wake up on Sunday morning if I could go hiking or sleep in or enjoy my early morning coffee while watching YouTube videos of people burning puppets? I mean, I would enjoy that greatly. However, people are a lot more likely to give worship a chance if they already have connections in your congregation. Build friendships and authentic relationships first. And if people show up on a Sunday, that's great. And if not, you've made friends and are better connected in your community. That's a win-win either way. We don't seek to build community partners to grow attendance. That would be manipulative and a really shallow form of friendship. We build community partners because we want to be better partners in our communities. As you engage with your community, invite people to help and to serve. Create clear paths for their involvement. Live an authentically optimistic life about the ministry that you are doing. Be aware of language. For many, the word member is a 4-letter word and terrifying. And focus on action, not on knowledge. What we can do, not what I can say, or what we have always done. What does all this look like? Let me give you an example. Two Tones Brewing here on the east side of Columbus in the Whitehall community is a wonderful community partner of Faith Lutheran Church. After serving here for about a year, I pitched an idea that we work together and develop a beer that would kick back money to fund our free community meal program. Everything was set to launch and the beer was released on February 28th, 2020. And then, 2 weeks later, COVID shut down the world. Knowing that there was a need for food and not having a commercial kitchen, the congregation reached out to another one of our community partners, the food truck Uncle Will's Wagon. For the past 2 years, Uncle Will's Wagon has been our food source for the free community meal program, financially supported by the good folks down at Two Tones Brewing. There has never been an expectation for anyone to join us for worship on a Sunday. It's simply community partners working together to feed our community. July 10th of 2022, we launched our Run to Church 5K. It was a run through our Whitehall community before worship that Sunday. When all of our road course volunteers backed out the week before the event, I filled those 17 volunteer slots with owners, brewers, patrons, and regulars from Two Tones Brewing, all who were happy and excited to show up and to participate. I believe that a church's impact in the community can best be measured in engagement, not attendance. So may we be so bold, and may we be so brave to engage, to trust, and to see where God is leading our parishes in the parishes we serve.